Use and welcome to Book 101. Book 101 is all about the books that I read for the last 40 years. And today I have my special guest. He's the author of the book Moments in Time, no other than Mr. Tom Locke. Welcome to Book 101, Mr. Tom, and of course, Music 101. And can you please introduce yourself?
I certainly can. Hi, everybody. My name's Tom Locke. I'm located in Vancouver, British Columbia, on the west coast of Canada. And it's my pleasure today to talk with Daniel and being on Music 101 to talk about my book, Moments in Time, stories about artists and songs of the 50s, 60s, and 70s, or fans of music from me, a music fan.
Definitely, indeed. So, Mr. Locke, what do you think music for you?
Well, that's really a great question, Daniel. It sort of gets back to, what motivated me, if you will, to write this book. And strangely enough, there were three things. First was my grandfather. Back in the early 70s, I really noticed a decline in my grandfather, and to a point that what concerned me was that as he got older, he didn't have any hobbies, like something to do, whether it be reading, traveling. His idea was, fixing cars and stuff like that. But there's only so many things you can do. You need something else to keep you going. So I said, when I get older, I want to make sure I have a hobby, something that I can reflect on. So music became it. Secondly, as a young man going to university in Toronto, where I grew up, I would listen on the radio to a syndicated radio show out of the United States, out of Chicago, by a guy named Paul Harvey. Many of your listeners may remember him. He was the iconic uh, writer, producer, and voiceover guy for a segment called The Rest of the Story, where he would tell you a story and you're trying to figure out who he was talking about. And at the end, he would surprise you with what it was. So, and lastly was my love for music. When I was born, I grew up in the 50s and 60s, and music was just part of our household. The radio was the major piece of equipment in our home that we listened to. TV had come on, yes, but radio was on constantly throughout our home. So that's what motivated me to, hey, keep this in mind as I got older to do this. So as I got on and I ended up in the entertainment industry in the area of post production in the film industry here in BC, I had to have an escape as well from that, and that was my music. And then I guess I have to thank, strangely enough, I have to thank COVID for making the difference for me writing the book because it gave me time to write something that I was really motivated in. For the last 23 plus years, I've been writing a weekly 5 minute segment on music about the music of the 50s, 60s, and 70s for um, listeners to an internet radio show. It's been around for 27 plus years called Treasure Island Oldies. And the listeners on that show and my other friends said, "Hey, Tom, you should put this into a book." And that's what motivated me. And the book came out in 2021, and I've been very fortunate. It's been very successful. It's won 5 awards, and it's helped me meet and talk with and other people who have an interest in music. No different than yourself, Daniel.
Can you tell us about being executive producer?
Sure. And I'll step back a bit. As I mentioned, I was born and raised in Toronto, and I got involved. Actually, started in, believe it or not, in the accounting industry, and I worked for Deloitte Haskins and Sells, and they're known as Deloitte's now. One of their clients was a company called Ampex. That's spelled Ampex. And they were big in the electronic field, providing professional equipment to radio stations, uh, radio producers, TV stations, and TV producers. In fact, and if you take a look at old albums from the late 50s and the early 60s, you flip them over, it'll say recorded on an Ampex 350 or a 351 machine. Anyway, a number of people in Ampex who I work with decided we wanted to get into the area of post-production. That's basically the editing and at that time converting film over to tape and editing TV shows and commercials. And they wanted to set up in British Columbia. So I came out there and had quite a career with a company called Gastown Post and Transfer, which became Rainmaker Digital Pictures. In that time period, I ended up uh, taking the company public down the line. This was after we had established ourselves in the TV area. So shows like 21 Jump Street, we did here and post-produced them here. The X-Files and Millennium, and other shows that you may recall. So that was terrific. I got out of the day-to-day in the late 90s, taking the company public so I could start my own business consulting practice, working with like minds in the entertainment industry, but in and other industries at the C level, working with CEOs and CFOs and helping them set up their businesses, given that I have a business background. And that led me to my intrigue about creating product like my book, but also creating movie type uh, initiatives, uh, particularly in the area that I could tie in with music and also understanding the financial aspects of it. You see, the business I'm in, Daniel, is show business with the emphasis for me on the business aspects. So I got involved in executive producing, which it involves sourcing out the right projects, getting the rights to do those projects, and then finding the right money to finance those projects. And so that's what I've been sort of immersed in the last little while. And also I spent 9 years at the University of British Columbia teaching a course on how to make or how you create a competitive edge for you in marketing your films yourself as you move forward. So that's sort of an overall snapshot of what it is. And the executive producing is fascinating because you interact with a lot of people. Patience is a virtue. One project I have is that I'm in probably about the 7th year on it. That's not uncommon. That's not uncommon in this business.
Very well said, Mr. Locke. So, moments in time. How did you craft it?
Well, that's a great question. If I mentioned that guy Paul Harvey, remember at the beginning, and three things came to my mind that we've certainly happened over the years. No matter what your age is, and our attention span has got a little shorter, and people love stories from the past because it puts a smile on their face, which is really what the motivation was for me. And to be able to hear the music, how could I tie technology in with the book? So the book is very unique. In fact, I'll make the claim there's no other book in the music industry in the world like this book. How it works is there's 12 chapters in the book, 10 stories in each chapter. So there's 120 stories in this book. But each of the stories are only 2 pages. And the first page is written like Paul Harvey. It's like a mystery. It's like, gee, they're going, who is Tom talking about here? Or what song is he talking about? So you get down, starts on the right-hand page, you turn over to the left-hand page, and it tells the rest of the story and introduces you to the song. Then you go to the bottom left-hand corner of the book, and there's a QR code. You put your smart camera over that code, and it directs you to listen to the song.
Interesting, Mr. Locke. Moments in time. What behind the title of your debut book?
Yeah. Well, the title, to me, because they are moments in time. Music is, I often call this theater of the mind. When you hear a song, Daniel, and I hear the same song, but what you conjure up in your memory is a different moment, right? And the time of that moment may be at a different time as well in your life where that song was impressionable. So hence moments in time. That's how I got it.
And before we go on, I want to shout out to the people listening to these following countries. According to my ranking tops in the last 30 days, in Zambia, I got number 7 on the Apple chart. Thank you, Zambia. Qatar at number 29. Oman at number 33. Slovenia at number 45. Pakistan at number 48. Nigeria at number 69. And United Republic of Tanzania at number 25, Jordan at number 63, Canada at number 86, Slovenia at number 96, and Cambodia at 115, Zimbabwe at 130, Egypt at 136, Indonesia at 158, South Africa at 182, Norway at 183, and Belgium at 234. Thank you for supporting this podcast because this podcast is created to empower writers all over the world and music lover, of course, all over the world. And thank you so much
Daniel,
because
before I go, may I mention it? I'm so glad to hear that your podcast is around the world. My book is available on Amazon all through the world. And I also have a website if people want to come and have a look at that. And it's just simply for moments in time, it's mitstories.com. So that's MIT Stories, all one word.com. Happy to entertain anyone that comes there. And as I say, there you go. You got Amazon worldwide for sourcing.
that be awesome, people, because this podcast, my book 101 and music 101, created to empower writers all over the world, like Tom Locke. So, Mr. Tom, according to Miss Catherine Watkins, so great to reminisce and sing. Uh, so, Mr. Locke, can you sing a song of the 50s a little bit so that our listeners can?
Oh my gosh. That's well, that a song, from the 50s. Um, for me, it would have to be I would pick one that actually was called it was they're called crossover country songs, songs that were big in the for country music, but they loved them pop wise. And and I'll give you a few bars of an opening one. And it goes, it's by a guy named Marty Robbins. Okay, and he's a big country star, but he also was big on the pop charts here in North America in the 50s, 60s, and right into the early 70s. And it was a beautiful song. It's called Story of My Life. And it starts out, I want the world to know the story of my life. How we met, how we charted, how we kept broken hearted. I want for you to hear. Anyway, there's enough for you.
Bravo, Mr. Locke. And how about the 60s?
The 60s, a
Yes.
song from the 60s that I can not butcher. Let me think about that one because there's so many. The 60s, uh, I guess, hmm, there's a song by a group called The Showmen, and it came out in the early 60s, actually charted twice on Billboard, strangely enough, in 61, 64. And it was a song called It Will Stand. And what it was talking about is that the music, that rock and roll wasn't fading away and it would be here forever and ever. And the lyrics are kind of interesting. Because it starts out rock, roll, and then it goes, You take some music, music, good jumping music, some moving and grooving, rock and roll will stand. Heartbeats, drum beats, little dances and move your feet, some rhythm that can't be beat. There you go. So that gives you a little bit of a 60s song. Your viewers are probably off by now. Like, gee, I'm not listening to that guy. That guy's brutal.
Bravo, Mr. Locke, and I love it. Moments in time. What inspired you to write?
Well, again, getting back to them, I think this book, to be perfectly honest, this book is not about me. I think first and foremost, that's very good. You can read about me in the preface and the forward of the book, but really, this book inspired me was to put smiles back on people's faces after trying times with COVID. And what does that music? When I start talking about music of 50s, 60s, and 70s, and I know on the other side, you got to be smiling, relight up. And that was what I did. Like, not only that, the stories of these this is part of the music legacy, the evolution of rock and roll, if you will. This should not be lost. And so it motivated me. If I can make a difference and I can get that book out there that people have something that they can reference about those times, then I've achieved my purpose. So much so, I should tell you that my book is in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame in their library and archives in Cleveland, as well as in their bookstore there as well.
Congratulations, Mr. Locke. And can you describe the research process of Moments in Time?
Oh, the research process. Well, great. Well, first off, what really helped me a lot was I'm a record collector, or was a record collector for over the years, so I could dig deep into the records. I also have my own library of about 50 books, authenticated reference books for my project. And hey, thanks to the internet and that, I was able to source stuff there too, but more of hey, making sure that I had two or three sources for every story that I had told. The other part was personal experience. I've had the pleasure over the years of seeing some of these groups perform live, and it really inspired me. So in the story, I would hint a little bit about what I experienced in seeing these groups and the type of individuals and how committed these singers and songwriters were. So it's a real collection of personal experience, book writing, and sitting down and talking to wonderful people, such as the DJs. I've been blessed to have been a good friend of the late Red Robinson here in Vancouver, and we had a lot of great chats about rock and roll and the people that he met. And also in Cleveland, there's a gentleman named Norman Knight who's written 8 books on rock and roll, which I also reference uh, in my writing. And I've been blessed to meet him as well as a few other DJs in New York, San Diego, Los Angeles, and San Francisco area.
Who are your literary influences?
Certainly on a broadcast level, Paul Harvey. Now, this is going to make you laugh a little bit, maybe, but uh, when I was in university, one of the courses I took was on private detective fiction because I loved mysteries. So I had the chance to study all these great private detective writers. One of the greats and people who've ever followed private detective fiction, I'll tell you, was Raymond Chandler out of LA. And the way he would weave a story so that you would go through it and it was very succinct and concise and then come to the end and you went, hey, you know what, that was worth the wait. So it's writers like those that I really I mean, Stephen King's wonderful too. I could, I can read a Stephen King book. When I get into his book, I read it very slowly because there's so much information. And I also from literary, I also like biographies, and I read a lot of biographies of musicians. Tommy James, I've read his. I just recently read one on Chuck Berry, and boy, did I ever learn more, which just gives me, more information than I can share with my followers.
What challenges did you face while writing Moments in Time?
That's a good question. And I would have to say is finding the time to write moments in time. And so that was one. The other one is I knew nothing about the publishing world. I self-published this book, but so what it ended up being is a tremendous, tremendous education for me, Daniel. And where I was blessed is I was able to source through an agency here, actually headquartered in Vancouver, called the Self Publishing Agency. Through them, I was able to source a good editor who not only was good at editing what he was reading, but he loved music. So that was a big win. And then I met a tremendous book designer who did a tremendous job for me in designing the book. But if I hadn't gone through that process, I would have been going in circles and to figure out how to publish it, how to get an ISBN number. I was like the new kid on the block in doing that. So that was sort of the major challenges for me moving forward. The content wasn't an issue because I created it, but where a lot of work was done in that to verify these things that I had done. You have to remember, I've been writing these for 23 plus years. So my biggest challenge is going to sound kind of funny was of 1,000 pieces I've written, how do I pick 120 for this book? So I had to pick them in a way where I pretend I'm the audience. Okay. What would I like to hear? What would I find interesting in reading? It's not about me again, it's about the listeners. And that has really helped me with the book and the great feedback that I've got from people. So that where I would say those are the major challenges for me moving forward. And all challenges, Daniel, are opportunities. And it certainly has been for me.
Very well said. Mr. Locke, can you share to us your daily writing routine like?
Wow, that's interesting. When I used to do my course on creating your competitive edge, sort of giving back to the people in the film industry, which I helped build here into a billion-dollar industry, my big thing was I would walk into the classroom and say, well, the hours are 9 to 5, 9 a.m. to 5 a.m. And if you play your cards right, you get the odd Sunday off. You know, how, how do you like me so far? And people sit back a bit because that's the strange part about the business. There is no 9 to 5. There's no 8 to 5. There's no retirement date either. I mean, if you do what you love what you do, and you give more than your promise, the time becomes irrelevant. You can spend a lot of time on stuff, writing and doing stuff. The key is at the end of the day is what did you produce? What were you successful in getting? It's not time; it's about results. So my day is again, I have a very eclectic background. I aside from I write this once a week. I spend about 2 or 3 hours writing a piece that airs every Sunday. And then I make sure that that piece I spend my time marketing and promoting and getting the word out into the marketplace. No different than me talking to you today. And that takes up a lot of time. I actually counseled some of the new writers in the marketplace, and I said writing the book is only 50% of the game. It's marketing and promoting it that is really going to get you to the next level and get the recognition you richly deserve. And also, more importantly, getting what you put down on paper out to people so they can read what you have written. So, and I get involved in other things. A big charity background. I I believe in exercise and sports. I play a lot of squash still today. I play double squash 3 times a week and work out. I've got the pleasure of spending time with my grandkids too. So, I'm not looking at the clock every day, Daniel. That's for sure.
So, how do you feel your personal experiences have shaped your writing?
Ah, that's great. Actually, I think that's been a cornerstone when I really think about it, is because how I look at things. Um, and I have an acronym that I work with that I've used in business for many years, and it really does shape me. This sort of describes, my approach. My approach is laugh. That's LAFF. Okay. The L stands for listening. The A stands for adapting. The F stands for follow through. And the last F is fun with purpose. And that's what I use.
Before we go on, I'm inviting you to listen to my other podcast, Food 101, our third season, with Chef Alessandro, one of the best executive chef in one of the best restaurant in downtown Toronto. And please do listen to our latest episode. We talk about olive oil, people. Olive oil, one of the best ingredients or versatile ingredients in the kitchen. Plus one more. Our books are out, not only one but eight volumes. People, Food 101 Volume 1 Basics up to 8 is only books that you need how to create a delicious food, available on Amazon and leading online bookstores worldwide. So, Mr. Luck, moments in time, what is the best highlight?
Best highlight. Well, I think they're. Well, I'll be. I'd probably be a little arrogant there, saying they're all highlights for me. I think the big thing was trying to find pockets that would be highlights again for my listeners. Some are intrigued about the British invasion, so I had a whole chapter called "Across the Pond." So talk about those things. Some people like fun or novelty records or silly songs. So I have a whole chapter on just for fun, and they're like fun records that came out back then, and that's kind of neat. Some people like the early days, the when things were happening. You'll probably heard an expression called doo wop. Well, that's street corner harmony is I like to refer to it that, and I talk about those early days. Growing up in Toronto was interesting because the Toronto New York connection. So we heard a lot of music in the late 50s and early 60s, rhythm and blues that morphed into this type of music listening, was huge on the Eastern Seaboard. So that's what I tried to do with the chapter. I have one, I was talking about Monty Robbins there in Story of My Life, a country crossover piece. So I have a whole chapter on records that were both country and pop records. So that's how uh, I tried to make the interest up for everyone. So put it to this, there's a chapter for everybody, in my opinion.
Definitely. And congratulations. Moments in Time is number 7 in ethnomusicology, according to Amazon.ca. How do you feel about the current state of publishing industry?
Oh boy, that's a good 2 hour piece. Uh, the recording industry itself in general has always been, a challenge. You read a book, you'll read about stories of artists who didn't make any money off of publishing. I didn't even know what it was. Uh, Today, and I'm biased in this, but I'm very happy about self-publishing it myself. I self-finance the book, so there's risk there and everything that you move forward with. But if you really believe that you have a product to move forward, that minimizes that risk. What you got to hope is that the audience that you're targeting agrees with you, saying, "Hey, yeah, this is the right piece," so you can handle that. But for and other people and some other people, publishing is being big, but there's only a handfuls. I mean, books are like noses. Everybody's got one. It's the distribution, the publishing, and how it got out there in the marketplace that is really, really the key. And I urge people writing down the line is think about the end game, if you will. Where is that book going to end up? How are you going to get that in the hands? Who's going to publish that? Who are you going to trust in moving forward with your book? And there's only so many hours in a day, but I really suggest people really think that through and lay out a game plan for them. But publishing today, uh, my preference is I'm really glad I'm doing it myself.
Yes, indeed. So, like, what do you think the most rewarding aspect of being an author?
Well, this may it's the people I've ended up reconnecting with and people who I knew of but never thought in my lifetime I'd ever meet. I had one guy through another friend of mine say, "Hey, he really likes your book. He'd like to talk to you." So we got on the phone. We had never met, and we were on the phone for an hour and a half. And this guy was a big sports guy out of Toronto who was on the NHL broadcasts for 17 years. Who knew he was a music fan? And we had a wonderful conversation, and we've become friends since. In another case, I had a gentleman out of Toronto. His name, if you're Toronto folks, his name was Duff Roman. Duff's 85 now, but he was one of the early guys in promoting and even as a DJ rock and roll in the whole Toronto area. And we've become friends now. So that, I mean, how cool is that? I got a gentleman in San Diego who I've got to know, and it's been wonderful. And he does a moment in time segment on his show every week, just as my good friend Michael Godin does here in Vancouver. So that interaction, that contact has been really, really gratifying. It's something that I didn't expect, but something I realize, and I know there's more opportunity out there to meet and others.
If you go back and give advice to yourself when you are first starting out as a writer,
Yeah.
what it would be?
Um, I think first off is sitting down and really grafting out. Start at the end and move back, move to the front. What do I want to achieve? Then taking a look at the impact, trying to have something innovative, try to have something different. So in my case, the different part was the creating the interactivity of QR codes. Even though my target audience is, people, that are a little older or their children, um, the key was how could I make the book innovating? The QR codes are great. Again, thanks to COVID, even people in my age group, a little older, where people, 50 plus, 60 plus, they had no problem adjusting to the QR code because, strange enough, because of COVID. They're going into restaurants, menus are on the table. You had to use your smartphone, our vaccination cards, So that helped set the table for me, strangely enough, uh, moving forward. So those are the type of things that to me are really key. Being innovative, having a subject that that appeals to many. I don't know if niche writing, where it's a very small target group, is not one. If you want to make a lot of money doing stuff, that's not the way to go. You have to have something that is an international appeal, and what better than the music? Where I niched it down was the great music of the 50s, 60s, and 70s, which still stands up today. A good song will go through any decade.
What inspiring message for those writers out there?
Yeah. Well, for aspiring writers, they, they say what you have to have is a real sense of commitment. And in a lot of cases, you can't do this alone. Uh, there's a lot of things that go into putting a book together, from its design, the cover, people walking by and seeing that on the shelf and going, I'm going to grab that. It looks interesting. To the content. I'm a big fan now of content being written more in sound bites than large chapters. So what I mean is, I think a chapter 2 or 3 pages gets read as opposed to a chapter that's 20, 25, 30 pages, just because of the amount of time people spend a day doing and other things. And in writing my book's a standalone in that you don't have to start at the beginning and go to the end. You can open the book up any place you want and read a story because it stands on its own. So, I mean, you can't always do that. If you're into novels and you're writing novels, well, hey, yeah, you got to set the table. But maybe you can set that table by, having more chapters that are shorter than large volume chapters, just the way people's habits are today. That'd be my big thing in moving forward. I also think that what motivates a lot of artists is, hey, I I want to make my life count. I want to leave the world with something, and I think that's very noble. And whether it's just an escape story like a novel, or you're trying to help with self-help book, or something as novelty, or something like music that I do, if it achieves your purpose and you're really motivated, committed to it, that is the driver. That'll make things happen.
Yes, I love the cover of your book, Mr. Tom.
Thank you.
It's
Well,
it's
that
something.
microphone on the cover of my book is exactly the same microphone Elvis Presley used on stage.
Oh wow, a vintage. Something else. So people stop procrastinating. Go for it. Write. If your passion is writing, go for it because probably you are one of the best in the making. Like Mr. Tom Locke. Right, Mr. Tom?
Well, thanks, Daniel.
So, Mr. Tom, can you please invite our listeners to buy Moments in Time?
Sure. Well, you can find it on Amazon worldwide and on my website at www.mitstories, all one word, .com.
Yes, and thank you, Listen Notes, for my listen score of 26 and belong to 10% popular show globally. And of course, Feed Spot for being the number 7 best art book podcast. Need to be followed this 2023. And this episode will be published on both my Book 101 review and Music 101. So, Mr. Tom, thank you for your time.
Now, thank you, my friend. Have a great day.
Bodycom people, see you soon.